We're gonna call to order. Wait, we're not gonna quite call it to order. We're gonna give it 30 seconds for someone very special to us.
Traffic on Boundary was backed up.
Yes, I saw that. South Carolina DOT.
Appreciate it.
Your tax
All
dollars
right.
at work.
So now we'll call to order the meeting for today, February 20th, for the airport board. First thing we'll do is Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. First thing we need is approval of the agenda. Well, we got that. And second, there we go. Thank you, Leslie. All opposed? It passes. So agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes from the January 16th meeting. I need a first for that. Howard's got that. Second. I'm going to give that to Jim. And all opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Approval of the minutes. Now we have 3 minutes for public comment. Okay, that doesn't look like there'll be any public. So we'll move on to the director's report. John, take it away.
Hey guys, how are you? I was hoping that moving it earlier, we'd get some public comment in here,
Yeah.
but so much for that. What do you guys think about 10 o'clock? Does it work?
I don't mind time.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't mind
Yeah.
staying.
Okay.
I think it's better. in the
Parking lot's
afternoon.
full.
Parking lot's full, yeah, I think it's because of the parking lot being redone over at the Arthur Horn Building.
Especially if you keep it in Beaufort every single time, like last,
I know, we're on a good trend.
No, ain't happening.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah. We'll be going back south in March, so. All right, let's click through this. As you can see, we had the winter weather. That was interesting. We have a few more pictures of that later on.
It's winter, all right.
All right, do your thing. I went to sleep. There we go. All right, some new members. Both Wesley and Joel are part-time firefighters at the ARF, and we hired them in order to try to reduce some of the overtime that we have over there, because there's it's a 24/7 position, 2 folks on, and we end up running into overtime. So they both are actively employed by other fire districts in the county, but they were interested in coming over to us. So they're just about through all their training, and they'll be ready to be full-fledged part-time ARF operators here pretty soon. And just yesterday was first day at work for Sandy. She is the 3rd member of our airport finance team. So as we're taking more and more of that on to the airport, we need some more people to help take care of that stuff. So Sandy's going to be doing a lot of what Elena did before. Elena has moved up a position, and then we'll have Brian doing less of the day-to-day and more of the strategic, budget-related, project planning, outward focus kind of activities that he's really gifted at. So happy to have Sandy there. I think she's going to be a great fit. And we brought her in and let her see the budget yesterday, and she didn't run away screaming. So I think she passed that first test. So welcome to her, too. And we're really getting tight over that admin building. So we'll be talking to you about a project in the next few months, probably, about a new building. All right, you may remember these 2 guys. They were at the airport a few months ago, went up to the tower to have a tour, and then they got an invitation from the fire chief to come back and check out the ARF. So these guys were able, Bennett and Chase came over, and they were able to get a ride in the truck and hang out with the guys for a while on the crew and learn a little bit about what the ARF does. So a couple interested guys, and definitely the proud grandfathers. Now, the sun kind of heated up things, and the broom tractor was able to basically throw sheets of ice off of the runway. So we were hoping that would happen this time. It might have happened, but the broom tractor's broke. So after the first day of struggling with just a Bobcat on a 5,000-foot runway, we figured we cleared, I think we figured about 2.5 million square feet of paved surface is what we cleared in a couple of days. couple of guys doing that. I got in touch with Public Works and found out that they had a motor grader that was south of the Broad and could be brought there. The roads were passable by a, big truck. So they brought a motor grader over, and you can see that in the one picture, and that was a game changer for us. They had to be real careful about how far down that blade was. We couldn't go right down to the asphalt because we've got grooved asphalt, and you really don't want to start chipping away at that. So they didn't get all the way down to the bottom, but what it did was take that layer of insulation off, and then when the sun would come out, it did start to actually melt that ice fairly quickly. But then you have to get rid of the ice balls that are left after doing the grading. And as long as you have everything off the runway surface, and as long as, we were concerned, 'cause we never do snow and ice removal. So we were checking the Part 139 and, making sure that we had everything the way it needed to be before we opened back up. And it turns out that with this amount of snow, it's pretty easy to meet the standard. But you have to achieve a no worse than wet condition. And that was impossible for a couple of days because it kept freezing on us overnight. So we couldn't get it fully dry because it was melting, but there was so much ice that you couldn't get the place fully dry. So for a couple of days, it would refreeze overnight. And then you'd have to wait till about noon or 1 o'clock for the sun to get warm enough to heat it back up because there was just nothing to put on these. And so we ended up opening up mid to late morning on the Saturday. So before the commercial flights on Saturday, so we lost Wednesday, Thursday, Friday as full days at the airport, which as we kind of measure ourselves against neighboring airports, and Savannah opened up Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening, or I'm sorry, Friday. So, they were only a half a day ahead of us, and but they don't have equipment either. So everybody kind of waits on the sun to heat things up and to melt things off. So it's a little bit challenging, and it did give us a chance to just kind of think through contingency planning and what-ifing the scenario. We're not going to spend a lot of money and prepare for an event that may not happen for another 10, 15, 20 years. But if we do find some product perhaps that has a shelf life that is extended and it's not an incredibly huge investment and doesn't require a whole bunch of specialized equipment to apply it, then maybe we look into something like that so that we could prepare for an event. There are pre-icing agents that you can put down on runways and taxiways, but we would have to look at just what the coverage is, what the quantity, shelf life, all that good stuff. Because it just doesn't make sense to buy snow plows and snow throwers and things like that at an airport like this in this area. And you see that everywhere. I mean, nobody has it. Charleston cleared because they have the Air Force, and the Air Force relocated equipment because they don't keep equipment there either. So it's a challenge.
One question for you, John. Do we know what the anticipated loss of revenue was for that 3.5 day closure?
This time of year is luckily fairly low because the airlines only have a couple of flights. So I don't have a number, but it's compared to a hurricane during tourist season, this isn't much. So if we had to take one, we'd take this over hurricane for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my assumption. So just considering future investment, I mean, I would,
Yes.
once in a decade event.
Yeah, it would probably take 3 or 4 events to recover to make that cost benefit work, I would imagine.
John,
So-
does the airport have any de-icing equipment?
Well, we don't. The airlines do.
They do?
They do.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And they use it a couple times a year.
Yeah,
They have to de-ice.
One thing you might want to think about, and it requires a little bit of investigation, is up north, what they do is they have multi-purpose vehicles. To take the most obvious example, in New York City, they turn garbage trucks into plows.
Mm-hmm.
So they're being used only for plowing when there's a snowstorm, but the rest of the time they're using those vehicles for something else. And some of those little bobcats that you had around here, if you had something a little bigger than that, those machines can cut the grass and potentially plow snow at the same time, just switching out the attachment you have to it.
Yeah, that's true. And with the Bobcat, that gives you some flexibility. It's small, but we do have a bunch of attachments for that to help us out. But in this case, with plow, it's just difficult because it's, with the grooved asphalt too, we want to be really careful about that surface. This was ARW, same thing there, but for whatever reason, it thawed much quicker up here. I don't know what the deal was. I don't know if it's because of the the elevation, or perhaps because we're right next to literally right next to the water, that kept the ground a little bit warmer as an insulator from the bottom. But ARW melted off almost completely by midday Thursday. So a full day and a half faster than Hilton Head.
Did you get less accumulation here? No?
Same thing. Yep, it was amazing. It was really
And it
fast.
also, I can tell you from having to go to the boat show on Friday, northbound lane had some really bad sections. I went in and out of four-wheel drive like 15 times because of the pine trees and the
Yes.
sun not hitting it, but the southbound lane was fine.
Yep.
So that may have had something to do a little bit too with that.
Yeah, it was interesting, because it not only melted off, but dried off quickly. And we do have near constant wind out there, so that helped. So as it thawed, it would dry off pretty quickly. But one thing that we found out too, and I'm not sure how you really fix this, but with the metal roofs here, and then with the ice and the snow and then the melting, they became a huge hazard
Yeah.
to the public and to equipment and to other buildings. Not as bad at ARW, but we did close off this side of the building because the other side got the sun and melted quicker. And so even though that's not a steep roof, because of the fact that it's the wintertime and the sun isn't, we're not as close, so it's not as strong, we didn't get the melt on the air side of that roof. And there were those little alleyways in between the standing seams of the metal roof generate little missiles of ice. And those guys are 30, 40 feet long, and if they let go, those will cause huge injury to a person and a lot of property damage depending on what's on the receiving end of that. And it was even worse at Hilton Head because the roofs are bigger, higher, and they're a little bit steeper. And so we had, 30, 40-foot missiles waiting up there to crash down into adjacent buildings and stuff. So there we were able to use the fire trucks to go over there and actually spray water on them and thaw them out little by little so that we didn't have a huge sheet coming down. But, you concentrate on the operational surfaces, and then you kind of look up and all of a sudden realize you've got huge life safety and property safety issues coming off of the roof. So just a lot of things to think about. But again, we don't want to develop big, huge, detailed SOPs because you just don't do this very often. So we'll figure it out. We'll tuck it away as experience, and it is what it is. So that was the snow. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the snow. School kids did. All right, so this is conference season. I think we say it every year, but kind of February, March is really the big time for conferences. So we had a couple of guys, our ARF chief and ops chief both went up to Atlanta a few weeks ago, beginning of the month, and went to the Southern Region Airports Conference and got all kinds of good information there. And then Steve and I attended the State Aviation Conference last week up in Greenville. So I've got a couple of takeaways from that later on in the presentation, but good conferences. And then coming up in March is the Southeast chapter of AAAE up in Charlotte, so I'm going to attend that. And then also that same week, later in that week, is when I go up to DC to meet with all the rest of the airport directors and congressional staffs and talk about the federal issues that we're dealing with. So a lot of traveling going on. All right, terminal updates. We've got a little slideshow to show you, so let's see if this thing works. There you go. All right. All right, so that shows kind of the progression, and that's only the last, probably about 5 weeks of progress. So there's been a lot going on. You see the weather changed a lot during the last two. We had snow, we had fog, we had rain, we had sun, fog again. But it's been going pretty smoothly out there. Things are looking good, and it's just about dried in now. So you can kind of see where it went from not having any of the insulated board on the exterior to now having all of that up. Roof is almost completely paneled in. Not the full decking and insulation is in there yet, but that's all happening now. So that's going on, and then the canopy out front. There's a temporary canopy in front of the existing building, and that's under construction now. So that should be done probably in a few more weeks. But it's coming along really nicely, and we're pretty happy with what we're seeing. So any questions on that? All right. Okay, wrap it up here. We are coming around to the golf tournament again. So if folks are interested in volunteering, we're going to have that same booth that we had last year on the 10th green near the 16th tee as well. So kind of get to see both sides. So Rosia is going to probably be in charge of coordinating that. So if people are interested, let us know, and we'll get those slots signed up. And then speaking of the terminal, 2 weeks ago we had American Airlines property rep come down for a visit, and I was able to walk him through the terminal along with our construction rep, Tom Mullen, who works for Talbot Bright and Ellington. And James from American was super happy, super impressed with what he saw. And we walked through the whole building, and James has done a lot of terminal projects with the airports that he's in charge of, or he's been through these. So he asked a lot of good questions and had some ideas here and there, but he really knew what he was looking at. He's walked through these projects a lot before, but he was very impressed, and we went all the way to one end and looked back towards the existing building. It's kind of impressive how big that new area is going to be. So he's been the first one to come down and get a tour, and he was really impressed. So that was good. Speaking of that, and kind of some feedback from the conference from last week, one of the last events of the conference was a legislative panel, and there were a lot of they were all upstate folks, so they were all talking about Greenville, Spartanburg, and Greenville Downtown Airport. But it made me think that we probably need to get board members to both airports and get you guys into kind of a tour, give you an airports 101. You may or may not have been in the airports. You may not know where we all work. You may not have seen the terminal, that kind of thing. But then our legislators as well, our state delegation, we really need to, form I have a solid relationship with them, but I think we need to get you guys involved with them, because we do have phase 2 of that terminal that needs to get built, and it's going to be expensive. So we need to continue to press on that and maybe build that relationship a little bit more with our delegation. We have a real strong local delegation, and they're in some pretty important positions in this legislative session. So more to follow on that. I just put that up as a note so you guys have it for food for thought, and I'll develop some ideas on that too and get back with you. But certainly would like to have some more folks down. And really our county council and town councils really should be, coming out to see the airports as well. So we'll talk about how to do that. There's a lot of things going on, so it's not easy to just lump that in, but I think it would be worthwhile to get folks over to the airport and take a look. So any thoughts on that, or anybody have experience?
I think the easiest thing for us would be if we do it either before or after a meeting.
Mhm.
Since if you're doing ARW, that allows, Hilton Head people are already over here. If you're doing Hilton, if the meeting's in Hilton Head, Beaufort people are already gonna be over there. We can meet either before or after and do it. I think that would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
is there any reason why we could not host a board meeting at the airport? Make that a retreat destination kind of thing?
I think the only thing we have is about the public being able to send it out
Yeah,
to the
it's
public.
having the Beaufort County TV channel, having the live feed and recording it becomes an issue. So holding the actual meeting out there would be tough. So we could-
It might be worth exploring though. I mean, there's a couple boards that I'm on that we will go to other locations. I
Yeah.
don't know what the requirement is for public notification, if we're legally bound to that. If it's just a live stream, I think they can handle that.
I think, because it used to be held at the airports, and then it had to be brought in for public distribution.
Right.
We can check and see though, if there's a way to do it via mobile.
Yeah.
Facebook
Big time.
Live.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
Something like-
Yeah, we'll take a look at that and
That's
see.
what Port
'cause
Royal
it-
used to do their meetings on, those Facebooks Live, if
No
you wanted
wonder
to
Port
watch it.
Royal doesn't
Yeah.
have any credibility.
John, have you, does the town council get the copy that, we get each month of the
Yes.
update? So they're already
Right,
getting.
the stakeholder update on the terminal?
Right.
Yes,
The electronic one,
right.
yeah.
Yep, so they're getting it, you know,
Okay,
so it's
cool.
getting distributed to them, absolutely. All right, March 4th, speaking about legislators, the South Carolina Aviation Association is hosting a legislative reception in Columbia. So if anybody is engaged with their members of our delegation at the state level, remind them of this. I'll be reaching out and inviting them as well. It's in the evening. It's like 5 to 7, I think, Steve, on March 4th. So I think we're probably both going to go, right, to that? Steve's on the board for the Aviation Association, so he has to go. But I'm planning on being there as well. So this is a good time for us to just interact with our local folks and let them know what projects are coming up. They're already engaged. Jeff Bradley from Hilton Head reached out to me probably a month and a half ago asking for information about phase 2 of the terminal so he can start pinging away at that on the budget. So he's already working for us up there. And then they all come together and kind of huddle around the issues, so they do a good job for us. Military versus GA safe practices. This was an opening session at the conference, and it was hosted by a pilot from the South Carolina Air National Guard. And not too many issues in this part of the state between GA and military aircraft. Most people are fairly familiar with what's going on, but he talked about some other areas of the state as well as Georgia, because we do have military aircraft that fly into the MOAs over by Athens. Bulldog is the one over there. But he talked about, a lot of GA pilots don't necessarily pay attention when MOAs are active. I think that comes back to reading NOTAMs and making sure that you're just checking all the information before you get out there. But he made the point that particularly with the jets, they can't see the GA aircraft, and the GA aircraft can't see them because they're moving so fast and their sight picture is so small that you can't see an F-16 that's out there. But what we learned is that they kind of do a roadshow, and they go around to different airports if asked, and we'll do a little presentation. So I thought about maybe trying to bring them down to either both airports or one airport and have everybody, show up. But it's always good to kind of be refreshed on things like that. And remember, just a few years ago, we had an F-16 versus Cessna 150 just up the road, Dorchester County. Not a good situation. So it can happen. So we just need to be aware of that. So we'll do a little more coordination on that and keep you in the loop.
The other thing about that, John, is a corollary. I'm noticing that at Hilton Head now, we're having, I don't know if it's an increased number, but a significant number weekly of military helicopters coming in. And they are a threat to other airplanes. We talk about this thing called wake turbulence, where there are spinning rotors. When somebody is parked or on the taxiway and one of those helicopters comes real close, that downwash from those blades can literally lift an airplane up. And that's something that people need to be aware of. So it's not just stuff in the air.
That's a good point. And the briefer also said that with the helicopters, they don't have the same equipment that the jets have. The jets have the interrogators, so they can find out what's out there. The helicopters don't have that. They don't have the same field of vision as the jets do, and they don't have ADS-B, and they're moving at a slower speed, which makes you think they're a little bit safer, but there's a lot of limitations there. So it's just good, general information for pilots to be refreshed on. So we'll kind of coordinate some of that and put something together, but I think that might be useful. And then the last item, the Military Business Alliance, that's a new committee with the start is the Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce, and I'm the chair of that committee for this item. And then we kind of morphed over to Beaufort as well, because Beaufort's got the Military Enhancement Committee, and we started working with Megan at the Beaufort Regional Chamber. And now what we're proposing is kind of a joint committee between the two chambers of commerce to really try to link the military community and transitioning military members with the business community in a very kind of a deliberate and intentional way, not just paying lip service to it and saying it's important and then moving on, But there's so many good assets here, and we benefited from that. I mean, Eric has left, but, you know, Eric was a hire through the Skill Bridge program, and he was a good example of how that can work. Our county administrator, when he transitioned from the Navy, he took advantage of Skill Bridge, and that's how he transitioned into the civilian world. So it's a good program, and I just want to let you know, I'm involved in that. Nick, we may interface on that, just, you know, with your relationship with Beaufort Regional Chamber. But I think it's a good thing. We're involved with the State Department of Veterans Affairs already, so I think it's going to be a good thing, and it may bear fruit, you know, for more good employees to not just the county, but the airport as well. Always things to do.
John, have you had any contact with the new Hilton Head airport liaison? As you know, they had elections several months ago. We have a new liaison there, and the same thing at the county level. We have a new liaison from the county to the airport. Any contact with those folks yet, or do we need a little bit of an outreach program to have them come to some of our meetings, see what goes on?
Yeah, Tom is still the one from county council, so that he remains the same, but,
The new town council representative is Melinda Tunner.
Right.
I have been in contact with her. She could not come to this meeting because she's away, but she'll be at the next meeting in March on Hilton Head.
yeah, and we plan to invite her to the airport so she can meet with me and the staff and kind of go through Airports 101 and get the tour, so, yeah, good point, Howard. Anybody else, questions?
Yeah,
Issues?
I got a couple questions on the ARF. How, for the part-time, so on a full-time ARF employee, how long, what are the shifts? Are they 12-hour shifts? Are they 8 hours?
48.
48 hours they're on? And then for part-time, they're 48 on as well?
They kind of fill in, what do we have them doing, 24s now, I think? There's a minimum, the way we've got it set up is part-timers coming over need to hit a minimum amount of hours to be able to keep their retirement going. So we're making sure they have at least that every month. But then if they have extra availability, we pull them in for extra shifts to kind of reduce our overtime. That's the plan. They're not all fully ARF qualified yet,
Right.
but when those two are, then we'll work them into the rotation. So I don't know what the chief's plan is as far as whether they're gonna be 24 or 48-hour shifts. I'd imagine 48s, right?
They could be. So
Yeah.
imagine a firefighter gets sick,
Right.
instead of adding another full-time firefighter to cover his shift, plus the one that he was scheduled to work, a part-timer would come in and fill that shift.
Okay,
So that's 24 or 48 hours of overtime that we don't have to pay.
right,
We're bringing in a part-time to do that.
yeah,
Or if somebody has to go do a live burn, we fill that position with a part-time instead of another full-time guy.
and just because of the incident we just had in Toronto and how quickly they responded, and, you know, that was absolutely amazing, you know, it's a miracle, you know, nobody was killed. How does the ARF, even being a pilot, how do they find out how does that response action happen so that they know that there's an issue? Because I don't know if they're sitting there watching every single landing, you know, who's responding to them?
The tower calls.
Tower
Yeah,
calls them?
if the tower's open,
Okay,
Tower has a hotline to.
yeah, tower hits a crash phone and that opens the doors and gets everybody moving. Visual, and if there's a known issue, if it's not something that happens,
right,
you
it's
know,
already
on
in the air,
landing,
they know they've got.
they'll
a
call
problem.
in,
Right.
and that happens, I won't say fairly often, but it's funny, I was actually surprised by a call from the Island Packet last week as I was driving back from the conference, saying, hey, we found out that there was an incident at the airport that the ARF had to respond to. What happened? And I said, well, I'm gonna tell you it wasn't serious because you're the first person who told me about it. And what it turned out to be was I think it was a 172 that was flying in and reported some kind of an issue that was an abnormality, landed perfectly safely, but it put the ARF on alert just in case, so they're standing by ready to go. But there's different levels of alert for the ARF guys. So sometimes they're just standing ready. Other times trucks are rolling, you know, depending on what the issue is. This was one of those that worked out perfectly fine and it wasn't an issue, but.
I was actually in the air listening to that incident.
Oh, is that right?
It was a Cessna 172, you're right, and the guy reported south of the field about 20 miles, he was having engine issues, but he wasn't specific of what it was, but the tower jumped right on it and said, this might be an emergency, so they did the right thing, and then he calls in about 5 minutes later and says, I'm fine. and the tower said, "You want to land anyway?" And I think he just moved on and went someplace else.
Okay.
So,
A lot of
Operator, you mean
paperwork,
operator error?
a lot of paperwork with declaring an emergency, so
Right.
yeah.
I don't wanna do the paperwork.
John, any updates on Eric's replacement?
Yes, we have made a selection, and I'm actually gonna have lunch with him today.
Okay.
And he's actually coming from another airport in the state, which is nice. So he knows how to manage an airport in South Carolina, has worked with the state system. But we'll bring him in, I don't know if it'll be at the next meeting, probably not gonna start until April, because you gotta do a little turnover back home, and then move over here. But we do have a selection made, so we're happy about that.
And any updates on the hangar financing at ARW through the county?
We did meet with the CFO, I guess it was beginning of last week, and we're still working through some of that. It's also the height of budget season, so it's hard to get a lot of attention right now to put that together. But we do have some ideas that we're working on, and there's a lot of different items to go with that, but we are ready to start the site work. So Steve and I are gonna meet with the capital improvements department head next week and talk about that project so we can get the site work moving. And we're hopeful that.
Was
as
that bid
gets
awarded?
moving- Yes,
Yes,
that's been
okay.
awarded. Yep, so we got a contractor ready to go. So we need to have that pre-construction meeting with the contractor, get that schedule set, and get that kicked off. So we're getting into the kind of the best construction season here pretty soon, so we're hoping to see that happen quickly.
John, question about our grant updates. Have we received all our FAA grants? Are they in place? Are there any still pending?
No, all the grants have been awarded. Most of them happened in the late summertime for scheduled grants.
But
So we're.
sometimes they get caught up in another vote there before they can be actually distributed.
Right, but everything that we applied for and we're waiting for has been approved, distributed, accepted, so we're good right now, and we're moving into the next season of applications, so come April, we'll have a lot more applications going out for next year's, or for, this fiscal year's grants.
Good.
Yep, it's a never-ending process, applying for new ones, working through them, and then closing them out, that's the hard part, is getting them closed out.
Anything else? Thank you, John.
Okay,
That's
thank you,
it.
all right.
Appreciate it. We have any, I don't think we have any unfinished business that I'm aware of. Anyone? All right, so we'll move on to new business. So we have some action items. The first three, I talked to John earlier, we can put those together. It's just an approval for them to apply for the grants, or not for the grants, but for the accommodations tax and the hospitality tax. So we're gonna put those all together on it. So do we have any discussion? Anybody have any questions on that for John about it? I think we do this every year, so it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so with discussion ending, I need a motion to vote. Good job. We'll stay on that side. Nice job, Nick. Okay, so let's, since we don't need any more discussion, anyone opposed to applying for these? Okay, motion passes. So moving on to 4, non-tenant commercial operating agreement, and I'll let John explain it on that for Beaufort County and Palmetto Aces Flying Club.
Yep, this is at Hilton Head, and this is just a new flying club that's gonna be operating. I don't remember if they're doing lessons. Do you remember, Steve?
No lessons, it's a flying club put together of partners that are starting a flying club.
Yeah, so they may have some rentals and things like that happen, but since that constitutes a business, they just have to have an operating agreement with us, so that's all this is. It's a pretty minor one.
Okay, anybody from Hilton Head have any other questions?
Do you have an idea of how many airplanes are involved with that?
I don't know.
Right now, one,
Yeah.
Just one?
right now,
That'd be a tough rental.
Might turn into an arm wrestling match or something, I don't know.
All right, can I have a motion? Let's start on the left side of the room. Okay, Brian? Second will be Leslie. Any other discussion about it? All right, let's, anyone opposed to moving forward, for John to move forward with the agreement? Hearing none, motion passes. So we'll move on to 5. which is a commercial operating agreement, and you're gonna get this question, so I'm just gonna bring it up. Explain why there's two of these. I understand why from dealing with the leases from before, but why there are two agreements, with the same company.
Sure, yeah, if you look at 5 and 6, and I think you need to vote on them separately,
Yeah.
but they're related because they're with the same company. But what Pilot Specialties does is they do check rides, okay, so he's an examiner and, been operating at ARW for years, but now we've got some office space for him instead of taking up the conference room, for an entire day, so he'll have a place to live there, so to speak. But the reason there's two agreements is one is that commercial operating agreement for the business, so that handles that. And then the second one, number 6, is the lease. So that's for the actual office space that he'll be in, and that needs to be separate because the county now has that standard lease language that we use, and he'll be signed on to that. And that, the lease actually goes all the way, that's 3 readings of council. So that's why they stay separate.
Okay. And there was another examiner that was also talking about coming in.
There was, and she moved on to another airport.
Okay,
Yeah, it turns out she didn't want to be in an office, so,
okay,
yeah, she moved on.
all right, perfect. So let's start out with 5 with the commercial operating agreement. Are there any discussion?
Do we know who is that DP? Is it the one that's been at the airport? I don't know
Yeah.
if
It's
his
Matt.
name is public. It is Matt.
Matt,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was all my question.
Yeah, yeah, so he's been there. Any other discussion? Okay, I need a motion. 2. All right, any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Who'd you get for first and second, just for,
Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct. I just went 1, 2. That's all I did. Thing 1 and thing 2, and that's wrong. We want to make sure that we're proper.
well, poor Rosia,
Two? I mean,
I'm the motion.
yeah,
Rich,
all right.
Rich has got the first one, Nick has the
Rich,
second.
Nick, okay,
Okay.
seems to be a trend.
All right, so now, anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll move on to 6, which we've already had discussion on that, unless someone else has another question. Being the fair chairman that I am, I will move to the left side of the room, offering people to be able to, okay, Brian and Howard. Brian will be the first, Howard will be the second. Any other questions on it? All right, any opposed? Motion passes. So that'll move on to the chairman update, and I have no update at all, other than the discussion about the snow, and I agree with you. In the time I've been here, since '93, we've only had this happen really twice, and one was in '18. So I completely understand. We ran into the same problems trying to clear snow. We had snow for 14 days. Based on a 6-foot pile in South Carolina, we were having over-under. There was some gambling going on at Butler Marine on how long the snow pile would last, and it lasted 14 days.
Wow.
So there was one big winner on that. Do we have any, talking to the committees, do we have any committee reports other than, we will be meeting, you'll be getting up together for the budget group?
Yes, next month in March, we'll have Brian in to do a finance update,
Okay,
and we'll talk through the budget as well.
okay.
Yeah, so I guess in the meantime, do we want to do the same kind of subcommittee thing where we get together
Yeah,
and chat
we have a
budget?
subcommittee for the budget, and I believe Howard's on it, I'm on it, and Brian's on it. And do we have, yeah, Rich, you're on it as well.
I think, was Ann on it also?
I think Ann might have
Yeah, I
been.
think Ann's on it as well. So we may want to set up a time
So
before.
Howard, Chris, Rich, and Ann, is that right?
Yeah.
And Brian.
And Brian, yeah, and I think we have that on the list when we did the committees, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. We'll double check that and,
And let's set up a time, give us a couple of dates, and that we can all meet before Brian comes over and does so then we can talk
Yes.
to the,
Yep.
say, yeah, we're all in.
yeah, we'll shoot for maybe first or second week of March so that we're at least a week ahead of the meeting.
Yeah, second week of March would be better. I know I'm putting together the Savannah Boat Show,
Okay.
so, yeah.
All right. You got that, Rosia?
We have our meeting the 13th of March.
Oh, is it that early?
No, it's the second Thursday.
I thought it was March 20th.
No, this meeting was moved because of whatever.
There's conflict, right?
Okay, but on his schedule, it's written down as March 20th, so that's not correct.
No,
What,
the notice she sent out the other day was,
It's 13th.
No, after
You
13.
guys give us best
13th.
dates.
Is it 13?
It is the 13th.
Okay, well, we're struggling right now on, do we have, is the next meeting the 13th?
13th.
Yeah, so that's really early, it's gonna be hard for us.
worst comes to worst, we'll do a Teams meeting.
No, I will not be here for that meeting.
Yeah, I'll be out
up
the
in New Jersey.
13th as well.
Okay, okay, so we'll have to do the budget, Brian can talk, and then we'll have to do a budget committee meeting, we'll have to see about working on that.
I was just suggesting that if we have the board meeting on the 13th, we could do the budget
Before?
before or after.
Yeah, we'll probably do it before would be better. But you're gonna be in New Jersey, Howard?
Going on the 10th, right. I'm
Okay.
going up on the 10th, be up there for about 10, 15 days.
Okay. All right, so maybe possibility of doing it the 13th before the meeting, board meeting, do the budget meeting?
Well, remember, the board meeting's at 10.
Oh, it is at 10? Ooh, you guys are getting us back, huh? Beaufort guys gotta travel. My hair's gonna be messed up, I'm just gonna tell you.
I will tell you, any Beaufortonians who don't drive south, you may want to leave early.
Oh, I know, I've done that.
It
drive,
is.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, during rush hour.
Unless you want to practice your language skills,
It
leave
was,
early.
yes, it was backed up to the mall at least.
Yeah,
Okay.
What are you talking about? We fly over there, it's 8 minutes.
that's what you do, you
I was
fly.
gonna say, yeah.
Although, if anybody's on the fence about the next transportation sales tax, I encourage you to drive over there in the morning.
Okay, so we'll work on that. So is there any other committee reports? I don't think there is. I talked to
I got a question
Leslie.
for Leslie.
You have something for Leslie?
What's up with the ambassador program, or is it too early to talk about it?
It's too early to talk
Yeah.
about it.
It's
We'll
moving
get-
on. I have full faith in Leslie. I know it's
No.
moving on just like a well-oiled machine like it always does.
No, we'll get together in April, May, and have everything in place by June. I have several new recruits, a list of people that wanna do it, so we're gonna have to start kinda looking at them a little closer.
tryouts.
Yeah, tryouts.
Yeah.
They need to be thoroughly vetted.
Yes.
Yeah, thoroughly vetted. Exactly. All right, so now we'll move back to citizens' comment. I didn't even know why I used plural because there's not even anyone here. So we have a motion for adjournment. To be fair, I'm gonna move from one side to the other. Okay, well, I'm gonna give it to Jim on this one. Second over here. Second, I need a second over here. I'm trying to be fair. Okay,
Yep.
we got it. And Tom, all in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.